The best episode of The Haunting of Hill House, and maybe the greatest horror episode of the 21st century so far, is a standalone masterpiece that perfectly blends the scares with real human drama. There's a long, proud history of horror on TV, going back to old timeless classics like The Twilight Zone and Hammer House of Horror. But the success of shows like The X-Files and Buffy the Vampire Slayer in the 90s led to an influx of horror TV in the 2000s, and that resurgence continues to this day. In the last few months alone, the Alien and It franchises have come to the small screen, and Stranger Things wrapped up its generation-defining run on Netflix. Throughout the 21st century, visionary creators like Bryan and Guillermo del Toro have brought their twisted horror stories to the small screen. Shows like Yellowjackets and The Last of Us have put their own spin on the familiar tropes and formulas of horror television. There have been many standout episodes in this 21st century wave of horror on the small screen, from the pilot episode of The Walking Dead to the final episode of The Curse. But they all pale in comparison to the greatest slice of horror we've seen on television this century. The Haunting of Hill House Episode 5, The Bent Neck Lady. The Bent Neck Lady from The Haunting of Hill House is a horror masterpiece. The Bent Neck Lady shows us Nell's life from childhood to adulthood, and eventually reveals how she died. As a child, Nell was haunted by a ghost with a broken neck, who she dubbed the Bent Neck Lady. As an adult, she went to therapy to deal with sleep paralysis and fell in love with her therapist, but then the Bent Neck Lady returned. Nell is convinced that Hill House can't hurt her, and that it's just a dilapidated property, not a hotbed of evil apparitions, so she goes back to the house. She sees it as it was in her childhood, with her family and her dead husband there to greet her, but it's really derelict and abandoned. She's led up a spiral staircase, where she puts on her mother's locket, but it's really a noose. Then, she's pushed by her mother's ghost, hangs from the noose, and dies instantly as her neck is broken. That would have been harrowing enough, but the twist ending goes a little further. As Nell is killed by the noose, her spirit travels back through her life, and she realizes that the Bent Neck Lady was her all along. Nell has been haunting herself the whole time. It's a masterpiece of horror storytelling. This episode exemplifies Mike Flanagan's pitch-perfect blend of horror drama. The Haunting of Hill House is Mike Flanagan's masterpiece. It's the epitome of his signature style of horror. Flanagan is one of the most prolific and popular horror creators of the past decade. He's basically the Taylor Sheridan of horror, and what draws audiences to his work is his ability to bring some humanity to his horror. It's what makes him so good at adapting Stephen King. King does the same. Flanagan's characters are three-dimensional and human. Their relationships are so compelling that the stories don't even need horror. If you took away the horror elements, Midnight Mass would still work as a spiritual small-town soap, Gerald's Game would still work as a relationship drama about a fading marriage, and The Haunting of Hill House would still work as a tragic family saga. But the horror elements bring something crucial to the table. Not only do the jump scares and creepy images make the shows more fun and exciting, they also enhance the drama on a symbolic, subtextual level. The ghosts are a metaphor for the demons haunting these characters in their personal lives. The monsters lurking around the house reflect the dysfunctions tearing the family apart. The Bent Neck Lady is the clearest example of Flanagan's masterful use of allegorical horror to highlight character drama. The ghost following Nell throughout her entire life, visualizing the inescapable terror of childhood trauma, then being revealed to have been her all along, is an embarrassment of thematic riches. Nell is the Haunting of Hill House's most heartbreaking character. Every character in The Haunting of Hill House is a tragic figure in their own way, but Nell is easily the most heartbreaking character in the show. Nell is the only member of the family who's a good person at heart. Everyone else has at least one glaring flaw, and she's also the one who meets the most horrific fate. Subscribe for deep horror TV analysis and storytelling. Want deeper looks into horror television and what makes episodes like The Bent Neck Lady resonate? Subscribe to the newsletter for thoughtful analysis, scene-by-scene breakdowns, creator context, and recommendations that illuminate modern horror TV. Subscribe. By subscribing, you agree to receive newsletter and marketing emails, and accept Valnet's terms of use and privacy policy. You can unsubscribe anytime. The first episode of the series ends with the shocking revelation that Nell has died, so the whole story is colored by the grief over her loss. The biggest jump scare in the show is Nell's spirit crying out for her sisters to stop fighting and just get along. The twist ending in The Bent Neck Lady is as tragic as it is terrifying. Every episode of The Haunting of Hill House is great, but what makes The Bent Neck Lady stand out in particular is its twist ending. The revelation that Nell herself is the Bent Neck Lady is as tragic as it is terrifying. She never stood a chance.